Okay, welcome back to Philly.net, and end of summer version. So we're going to start a new series of lab sessions tonight. The plan right now is for the next 4 months, we're going to concentrate on things that revolve around Git and GitHub. And of course, Microsoft is, what is the official status of that, Mr. Ross? Yes, so Microsoft has agreed to purchase GitHub, but it's going through all the fussy paperwork. Okay, all right. So we're going to try and get everybody a little sharper on pull request and standard Git operations, source code management, and then eventually all of the other tools that interact with Git. So the presenters for that are going to be Rob Kaiser, who's going to go first tonight, and Chris Gomez, who is around here somewhere. And then, of course, this is being recorded on our, it's streaming live on Mixer and YouTube and Twitch. And also we record all these and post them to our YouTube channel. So Rob right now is demonstrating the Mixer channel. So this is what the live feed looks like, which is really odd because I'm talking and that's what the odd feed looks like. And what else you got, Rob? So there is our YouTube channel, and you can see what's playing live currently. You can also go and look at all the uploads, and we've been doing this for, I guess, about a year now. So we've got quite a library, and some of these things have seen, here's a good one. Razor Pages has 887 views, so there's that much interest by non-Philly.net members around the globe to just learn a little bit from what we present. Yes. Okay, so we started last November. Thanks. And Rich Ross from Microsoft, who helps work at the MTC here. He's the master of all things video creation, and Microsoft sort of donates the equipment because they have some nice cameras and computers that make all of this happen. So that's been a good synergy for us. But you see, even the talk that last month that Chris Gomez did, that one's up to 300 views because that Blazor was a good, interesting topic. So how many of you are experts at Git? How many know how to spell Git? Okay. You'll know by the end of tonight, or certainly by the end of this year. So other things we have coming up, we have a monthly meeting in 2 weeks from tonight, and that is going to be guys coming from out of town to talk about how he approaches open source development, and he created what is called NOP Commerce, and that one is, I forget his name, Steve or Mike? Just click on that puppy. Okay, so it's John Beluga, and he's going to understand how he uses open source to create a viable product that lots of enterprises use. And then in addition, Mike Molesky, who speaks at a lot of our co-camps, he's going to come up, I think he's out near Harrisburg or something like that. And but he's going to show you how he uses Dapper. Does anybody use Dapper? I do. Love Dapper. Nobody, you know what Dapper is? It sort of competes with Entity Framework. So it's a lighter weight, what you call a micro ORM. And he's going to show you how to set up an ORM to connect to databases and then how to do testing with it. So you can pretend that it's returning records. Should be an interesting talk. Okay, and then of course we have the next lesson on GitHub is a month from now, and that meeting is going to be later Wednesday than normal. I'll explain why in a moment. But Rob and Chris are going to go into some more advanced stuff. and how to actually work with repos on GitHub. So, where is Andy?
Out there.
Okay, well, Andy, you're going to miss your 2 minutes if you don't show up. So, in addition, I will start sending out some more emails shortly, but our next code camp, I've announced that we have the facility here reserved for November 16th and 17th. Same format as the last 4 or so camps on the 16th. That's going to be a full day training session in like 7 different rooms. And that one will be a very modest. How much does it cost? $76. That's Philadelphia for you. And then the Saturday code camp, of course, is going to be no charge. That's covered by corporate sponsors. But we'll be calling for speakers and sponsors in the next week or 2. You won't have to reserve your seat until sometime early in October. So you'll get plenty of notice. And in addition to that, there is another conference that is being held in the next couple weeks, and Andy Schwann will tell you about that one.
Thanks, Bill. So I want to lead off by saying, well, I'm going to plug Tech Bash here. I'm a big fan of Code Camp. I've been there, I think I missed 1 in 20, right? And I will be at the next Code Camp as well. So we appreciate that, Bill. We've got Tech Bash coming up in October. Tech Bash is a 3-day developer conference, which is not quite as inexpensive as Code Camp. Okay, it's $3.99 for a 3-day conference. It's in the Poconos. That's up at the Kalahari, which is the largest indoor water park in the country. So we're going to have a good time. When we have slides, we're not talking about slides PowerPoint. We're talking about water slides. Okay, so a lot of you guys have probably heard me make this pitch before, and so I'm going to ask everyone for a favor, if you don't mind. I'd like to deputize all of you, okay, to please do me a favor, and if you already know about Tech Bash and have made a decision going or not going, that's fine. Please tell your friends, tell your coworkers, tell your peers, because really, honestly, it's just really hard to get the word out about these kind of events. So if I can ask you to do me a favor and say, hey, I heard about this thing, maybe tell a few of your peers, people that you know that maybe work at different companies, and say, hey, Tech Bash, I heard it's a really good conference. We've got Scott Hunter coming in to do the keynote. Anyone here know who Scott Hunter is? Come on, really? Wow. Okay. Scott Hunter is very senior. He pretty much owns ASP.NET, C#, the languages, and all that stuff at Microsoft. So he's coming in to do the keynote. We've got Azure content. We've got DevOps content. We've got .NET Core content, all that kind of stuff in 3 days. It's an awesome event, and I hope to see you there. It's October 2nd is when it starts. October 2nd to 5th. It's actually 4 days, but the first day is like workshops. And so I hope you guys will come. I hope to see you there, and thank you.
Show the Tech Bash website.
Oh, yeah, show the Tech Bash website. I like that. It's a good
And I heard a rumor.
TechBash.com.
I heard a rumor that our monthly meeting, they're going to give away a free seat to Tech Bash. Is that really going to happen?
We might be able to make something like that happen.
Yeah. Since you
Like right now?
free time. No, I said at our monthly meeting.
Oh, this is not the. All right. Well, let's see if we.
But we could promote the fact
Yeah.
that we're giving away a free seat.
Say that here.
That would be a way, if we were to promote the fact that you were giving away a free registration, that might really get the buzz out. What do you think about that? How many think that's a good idea?
I will see about that.
How many would at least think about Tech Bash if they knew they might get there for free?
By the way, can I say one other thing? Speaking of that, we had a contest with Telerik on .NET Rocks, and they gave out a free pass. And you know who won? Doug White. Remember Doug White from Delaware? Haven't seen him in a while, but it was funny. The name came across. I'm like, I know that guy, right? So we did have a contest, but maybe we'll do another one. That's a good idea. Thanks, Bill.
Doug White's a cool guy. He does .NET stuff to do like undersea exploration. That's what he does at the University of Delaware. So. All right. So any other questions on just upcoming Philly.NET stuff? Same old. Okay. Excellent. I'm going to turn this over to Rob Kaiser, and he will wow you with the Gits.
As well as you can be. So, who has not seen this link on the meetup page for the GitHub README file that we're going to go through and use and do some work with? If not, there it is. Go get it. Sorry. All right, Bill asked, how many people are experts, but how many people actually tried Git so far? A couple of you. What? Okay, that's not bad. How many people have used other source control packages? Okay. That they So, I mean, what kind did some of you use? TFS? What? Subversion? Visual Source Safe? I have used all those. TFS? Yeah. All right, so the best thing to do when you're starting with Git is to forget everything you learned about that stuff. It's just easier that way. Now, did you guys get a chance to download it yet or not? Yes? No? If not, there are two places you could go. You can go to gitforwindows.org and just get the copy for that, assuming you're running Windows, of course. How many people are not running Windows here tonight? Okay, so if you just go to the other site, which wasn't in the instructions, but this one, it's okay, git-scm.com, you can download stuff for your operating system, whatever it happens to be. I'm going to be leaning a little bit Windows on this, so just so you know. Not that it makes that much difference with Git, but there are a few different things that might be affected by it. So, all right. So, we're going to go through this lab that Chris set up, and we're going to augment it a bit with some other information, but that's okay. So, let's see. See where the start is here. Here we go. Okay. So most of the stuff we're going to be doing tonight, in fact, all the stuff we're going to be doing tonight is command line based. Okay. So how many people here have worked with the command line before? Well, that's good. You'd be surprised. All right, now I prefer myself PowerShell, but you can use command PowerShell. You can also use the Git bash stuff. I'll show you that in a second. Let me just make sure I have everything in the right place here. So here's my PowerShell screen. If you want to use the Git bash command line, you can. If you're a Unix or Linux type person, this will be very familiar to you. It does the, the commands like that. So you can play around with that. If you're not familiar with Linux or Unix, you might want to stay away from this in the beginning because you're going to spend more time trying to figure out what the commands are than actually doing the commands. So that's always a good place. So let's first, everybody get up a command prompt. Make sure everybody's there, right? And assuming you've all installed it, why don't we do a git -- version just to make sure that we all have it installed and we know what version we're running. So if I do this, I'm running 2.18.0.windows.1. I don't know if that's the most recent one or not, but this isn't a machine I use all the time, so there could be a newer version out there. But if you get something back, you at least know that you've got it installed. It's always a good start. Okay. Now, first thing we're going to do is I want to look at the configuration for Git. Git's just like any other application. There's configurations for it, but most of the stuff is stored in files sitting on your operating system someplace. Okay. So if you do a Git Config List, you should see something. Now, yours may not look exactly like mine, but you should see something. Maybe you're able to do that? No problems? Everything works? Great. So these, where it's getting this stuff from, is all over your machine. There are different files in different locations where it's reading this stuff from. Part of that is because it was set up for Linux originally, so some of the things is in the etc directory. Some stuff's in your root directory, your home directory, whatever you want to call it. If you do a directory of your home, your main directory, the one that, so let me just clear this for a second so you can see what I'm doing. So I am in my users / and my username directory. And if you want to get there, there's a couple different ways you can do it. If you're in PowerShell, if you do a cd tilde, it should take you there. Or you can just go to /users / whatever your login name is. And inside there, they put some files. So if you look for the Git Config, there should be a file out there called Git Config with a period in the front. Again, on Linux, things with periods are hidden. Sometimes they are in Windows, sometimes they're not. Depends on what shell you're using, stuff like that. But here's part of the config file. Now, this isn't the only config file on the machine. So you can't just come in here and make changes to it all the time and everything will work right. There are config files littered throughout your machine, and depending on the repos you set up, they could be there as well. But if we want to take a quick look at it, we can. And just to see what it looks like. And in this particular Git config, the only thing in here is the Win Updater information. But when you saw before, when I did a Git Config List, there was a whole bunch more stuff. So that other stuff is in the other config files laying around on your machine. Okay. You may or may not have a Git config file on your root directory. You should. You usually do. But there it is. So if we go back to the lab for a second, we can see what we want to do. Is we want to set up our email and our name. This is important because when we do commits, it gets attached into the commit, the name and the email address of the person doing the commits. So we think back on how or why Git was first set up. Git was set up because Linus Torvald, the guy who created Linux, was using another source control package, and they decided they wanted to start charging him for it, and he didn't want to pay for it. So rather than him pay for it, he created his own. And the way this was used was so that people could modify the kernel of Linux, and everybody could still work on it, distributed, and then they could bring all the changes back together again. So you need to know who made what changes, who made the ones that worked, and who made the ones that didn't. Later on, when we start looking at some of the tools and some of the other utilities that are available, you'll see that a lot of times the username is used in a lot of the displays of what got changed. Code is really good for that. Visual Studio Code. So what we want to do is we want to create, or we want to add in our username and our email address into the config. So the two commands are right there. It's git config -- global username. So what we're doing is we're telling Git to use the config command. We're going to put this in the global config file, and we're going to put in a username and a user email. So the user part is like, if you look on my screen here, the Win Updater part, that's what that would be. And the name part is this recently seen version. So I'll give you an idea of what that would look like. When we looked at the Git config list, you can see down here at the bottom, there's Win Updater, that's the part in square brackets, and then the recently seen versions was the other part of it, right? So we're going to add in our username and our email address. So git config global username and put your name in. Don't put the other thing in there. And git config email. And I never know if it should be in the quotes or not. Doesn't have to be. Because there's a space in there, right? Yeah. So after you do that, if you do a git config -- list again, you should see the stuff you just added down at the bottom. Yes. There's a system one and a few others, but I think you have to specify where to put it. You can't. Yeah.
All right, so that's a good question. And if you're in a Git repository and you do git config and you change a setting, you will get a config file in that little hidden Git folder. So it talks about in the lab, and like Rob was saying, this stuff cascades. That gets read, that's like has priority, just like a CSS kind of hierarchy. So you could do something fancy like say, hey, this is a repo that I use at work, so I want it to be my work email. And you could override your global. That goes for everything. You could like override the editor or override all of these crazy settings. I don't think a lot of people do that, but it is a little known secret. Yes, but it turns out, and there's a link in here where you can do some wonderful reading about this git config file. There's like 4 files in Windows, and they cascade just like if you're an ASP.NET developer, just like machine config and web config cascades. Same thing happens on Linux, same things happens on Mac. They document this really well. I was pretty impressed. I didn't want to reinvent the wheel, so the link is in there. They do a really good job.
All right, so if you do print out your git config now in your root in your user directory there, you should see the extra information we just added in. Okay, so that's where I put it. Okay, a little out of order here, but that's okay. Now, before we start creating a repository and doing this stuff, I want to talk a little bit about how Git thinks. So there are 3 stages to a file that you're going to use with Git. And one is you have well, actually 4 stages, but the stages that Git cares about is a modified file, and then there is a staged file, and then there's a committed file. Okay, so those are the steps that you usually go through. So you're working on a file, you make changes to it, it's now modified. When you want to commit it, you stage it, so it goes into the staging, and then after you do a commit, it's now committed and it's all set. And then you just repeat the process all over again. But that's really what Git works with. Those are really the basics of how it all works together. Now, I want to point out one thing for those who are using Windows. And I say this because I have run into this more times than I care to count, and it's always a pain in the neck. Windows is a case-insensitive operating system. Git is not. Okay. So what does that mean? I've had experiences where let's say I want to rename a project and I want to change it from uppercase to lowercase. You could go into Windows and make the change. Unfortunately, the Git, the piece that talks to Windows when they're talking to each other, the client doesn't see that a change occurred. So if you try to commit that change, it's not going to happen because Windows says, well, nothing really changed. You changed case, but I don't really care about that. And so Git thinks that nothing happened. One time we were working on a project, and a teammate and I, and I had to make a bunch of lowercase changes to it. And he was working on a different branch, and he was adding files. So after I had done all my commits and he did his commits, we ended up with two directories. One was uppercased and one was lowercased. It's a pain in the neck to try and fix that, especially on Windows. You have to do Git moves, you have to do a bunch of other stuff. So I just want to point out that you have to be aware of that stuff when it comes to Git. It's the one thing that is that I forget a lot of times when I'm working, because you just work and you're doing your stuff. I forget it. Yes, but it's one of the more difficult things to try and track down, especially if your build server is a Linux machine, which we had. So what happened was, when it went to grab the repository and build the project, it said, these files don't exist. And when we built it on our machines, it said, yeah, they're right there. What's the big deal? Because Windows put everything together again. So just want to point that out. That's experience. Yes. So, all right. So now what we want to do is we're going to create a first repository. So first thing we want to do is create a new directory someplace, an empty directory. Wherever you want to put it is fine. I put most of my code in a directory called code. So make a new directory. I'm going to call it pdn git, and I'm going to change to it. And for those who aren't used to command line stuff, this is a good place to brush up on your old skills or new skills. All right. Now, before we go any farther, I want to show. Yes. Yes. No. So the question was, is this a feature of Windows or a separate program? Are we talking about the fact that uppercase and Windows is case insensitive? Windows is case insensitive. Windows is case, it respects the case. So if you create a directory with all uppercase, it respects that, but it doesn't care if you reference it as a lowercase, if that was what the question was. So it's Windows that's got the issue with upper lowercase. Or you could say it's Git that has the issue with case sensitivity. It depends on what side of the fence you're on. Yes? No? Okay. All right. So before we do anything else, just to show that that we don't have a Git repository yet, if you type in Git space status, we should get back a fact that we are not in a Git repository. Right? Okay. So how do we create a Git repository? It's real tough. You type in Git space init. So it says initialize an empty repository. Now, you're saying, well, how does it know it's a repository now? What did it do? Well, you can check by looking at the directory, but you're not going to see much, right? Because that was good. What did I just do? It's something. It's hidden in a .git directory. So we can go in there and take a look at it just to see what's there. Not much, but it's good to know about this stuff. So if we switch to that directory, so cd space period git, right? We'll get you there. And do a directory of it. You'll see these are all the things that got created when you typed in git init. And one of the things in there is config. If we type out config, oops, helps if you spell things correctly. is it's got this stuff in it. So this looks a lot like the .git init, or git config rather, file we looked at earlier. So this, as Chris was saying, there are all sorts of files. This is the local config file. Yes. Right. This is what Chris was saying is if you were working on a project for a specific person or a specific organization, when you create that project, you could say, for this project, my username and email address is different, and I could just put it in there. Yes. Instead of can you put your own username and email address in the local one? Yes, and it is a local config. So config git space config -- local should do it. And there's some other stuff in here, description, head stuff, there's objects. If you're interested in programming against Git, they have some examples in the hooks directory. We're not going to look at that right now, but you can, at your free time there, you can go take a look at that. So if we go back up to the root again of our project and type Git status now, it's different. So now it knows that we have a Git repository. It knows that we're on branch master. It knows we have no commits, and it knows there's nothing to commit. If we did a Git config list, you'll see the extra stuff that's in that local one down at the bottom. So there's nothing magical about any of this stuff. It's all just using files on your machine. The fact that we can do all this stuff locally, we don't have a remote server anywhere, we don't have to worry about any of that stuff. So if you're used to Subversion, where you have to connect out to a remote server to do all this stuff, to commit things like that, you don't have to worry about that for this. You don't have to worry about anything having to do with a remote server, because everything is local. Okay. But he wants you to open it up in code. If you don't have code, you can use Notepad. So I will do Notepad. You can use code if you want to. And we're just going to create the index.html file that he's talking about here. So for those who don't have code in, you can just do this and put the name of the file in here so that it knows where to put it. And if you want to use code, you can do that too. I won't stop you. If it asks about creating the file, say yes, you want to create the file. So there's my Notepad. I'm going to put in an exclamation mark. Press tab once, he says. I will do that too. Okay.
So the purpose of that was, in Visual Studio Code, that's like a silly, dumb way to make a complete index.html file.
Yeah, I know. But I'm just going to do it this
way. But it really doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter
what the file is.
That's right.
We're just trying to make unique files. That's all.
That is correct. So I'm going to save it. And you can all save it. I'm going to close my Notepad for the time being. All right, so we made a change. If we do a directory, we can see that there is now a file sitting out there. If you are using the Git bash, it's going to give you a little bit more information. What I usually use in PowerShell is some add-ins that will tell me the status of my repository, similar to the way Git bash does it. There's lots of things out there. I use PoshGit for mine. I don't know why it's called that, but that's what I use. All right, so let's do a Git status now, just to see where we're at. And you should see something like this. There is something red up there. I apologize. That's just the color that they use. So what it's telling you is Git says, hey, I see that there's a file here that I know nothing about. And it helps you out. It says, hey, if you want to, and it's an untracked file, so Git is not paying attention to it at this point. But it's giving you little hints there. It says, use Git Add and the file name to include it in what will be committed. So it's giving you a little help here, right? Which is always nice. So what we're going to do is we're going to do a Git Add. Now, there's a couple different ways you can do Git Add. In this case, we only have one file, so we can specify the file directly. Right? So we can say git add index.html. If we had a whole bunch of files, if we had used something to create an entire project outside of Git, then we wouldn't want to have to do a Git Add for every single file that's there. So there is an easy way to do it. If you just do Git Add, well, let's just do Git Add by itself first. And if you do just Git Add by itself, it does try to help you out. Because I'm not sure what you're talking about, but maybe you meant this. So if you do a Git Add with a period, it's basically saying add everything in the current directory. I don't think it does subdirectories. Does it? It does do subdirectories. Big, powerful boom. Is that what you said? So we can either do git add index.html, or if you want to do a big bang, you just use the period. Either way works. And now, if we do Git Status, it's now green, and it says, okay, we have no commits yet. We have changes to be committed, and here it is. It's a new file. It's called index.html, and everybody's happy. Now, so a Git Add will put it into staging. So after it's in staging, what do we want to do with it? We want to commit it. We want to commit something. So if I just type in git commit, I hate you, Chris. Before I do that, let's just go through this real quick. How many people here are familiar with Vim? Okay. That's the default.
The purpose of this part is so people don't want to do this again.
Yes, I know. Don't ever do this again. So if you just type git commit without anything, there it goes. I'm now in Vim. Chris was nice enough to tell you how to get out of here, because this is the place that people get lost who aren't used to it.
So you would go and add a comment
Yes. So he says hit slash.
So I need to change that README because an italic I looks like a slash. Now that I'm seeing it, it doesn't look good.
I was wondering about that. So you hit I to go into insert mode.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes, isn't it though? He said type hello world. Okay. And this is where it gets fun with Vim, right? How do you get out of Vim?
Yeah. And you really don't have to take notes for this because the next step
makes it much easier.
You never have to use Vim again if you.
And by the way, whenever you use Visual Studio or Visual Studio Code or almost any other editor that works with Git, you don't ever have to do this again. Yes. So what you want to do is hit escape. Yes. And it takes you out of insert mode. Now what do you have to do? Well, now you hit a colon to get you down in the command line out at the bottom. And then you hit X to get out for exit. And then you hit the enter key.
What mainframe did this fall off? This is how Unix administrators kept their jobs.
Yes. Yes.
I set my editor to Notepad++ forward to that.
Yes. Yeah, there's a little later. We'll talk about that. If we get to that. That's in this one, right? The setting default? I thought so. Oh, there it is. Set a text editor. So, if we read this, yes. No. Everything we're doing, so the question is, since we committed it, should it show up on GitHub? We are not working with GitHub yet. Everything we're doing is local. So it's in your local repository. Okay.
Which are
a set of text files and things like that. In fact, let's go back and take a quick look at what the response was after the git commit. It says that it did a root commit on master. And then there are these numbers and letters after it. That's the hash for what it's, where it's, or how it's stored a snapshot of your changes. That hash, as Chris likes to say, is like a Post-it note. So we can get back to that anytime. We can check out that hash code, and it will take us back to this current position we're in. We'll show that in a little bit. I'll go through some of that stuff just to give you an idea of what I'm talking about. I don't know. What does the mode specify? Oh, it's the permissions? Oh, it's the things you don't have to care about when you're working with Windows. It's Unix permissions. There you go. Again, how Unix administrators manage to keep their jobs for so long. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to use Git Config to set up a text editor. Now, in this case, this is going to set up Visual Studio Code as your text editor. If you don't have Visual Studio Code installed, what would the command be for like Notepad if you didn't have anything installed?
I don't actually know Notepad, but again, the Git documentation site's actually pretty good, believe it or not. They talk about the Notepad++,
right?
And they even have this whole section on adding things from Beyond Compare to other popular editors. I think the main reason that I kind of stuck with code is that I knew folks here that maybe brought a Mac, like they can still get it.
That's true.
But I'd be curious to see how Notepad works for you, so I'm egerly watching.
Oh, you're gonna see? You
I haven't tried it. I just haven't tried it myself. Not Notepad. I've done that.
Okay. So The only thing I do know is that Git requires it to be somewhere in your path, whatever you put in there, so it can find it. So I think if you wanted to do just plain old Notepad, I think you have to put notepad.exe. Is that what it is? But we'll just do it this way. We won't risk it. So if we type in this command, and the -- wait is a code command to tell it to not just open and close. Right? And where we're putting it is in the global, so we know where that is, right? And it's in core.editor is the key that we're putting it under inside our config. So just because I like to look at these things, if I type git space config -- list, you know, like we've been doing, somewhere in here, there it is, core editor. Okay, so it did put it in there. Now, it did put it in at the very end because we have local stuff that shows up after it, right? That's why it's not sitting at the very bottom like what was when we did the user stuff. So let's go in and let's just make some changes to our, you put whatever you want into the file that we just created, that index.html file. Just make some changes to it in whatever editor you want to use. Okay. So I'll just continue with Notepad since I was using that already. And there's mine. And I'll just put in now it's interesting, and a lot of people don't think about it like this, but most people use Git for code, but you can use it for anything, right? So anything you want to have in a source control situation, you could use it for. So if you have a Word document, you have an Excel spreadsheet, anything, it doesn't matter. You can use Git and keep it. And the nice thing about that is you can go back to previous versions and you don't have to worry about it. And it's not big. It creates pretty small. It's a pretty small impact on your system, and it's pretty fast.
So you can do it on sound pictures?
Anything, you can do it pretty much on anything, yes. Although pictures might be a little big, but yeah. All right, so if I make this change, and I'll save it, and everybody saves it, right? Let's just do a Git status again, just so we can see where we're at. And for those who like or can read the red on blue, it's a horrible color combination. Instead of saying new file, it says modified. So it already knew, we were already tracking this file. It already knew about it. Okay. Now, I'm going to do a slightly different commit. So it's sitting here, it's not staged. Okay. But we don't have to necessarily stage it every time we want to do a commit, especially if it's only one file that we're working with. Staging comes in handy when you have a lot of files that you made changes to, but you only want to commit a few of them. Then you want to stage the ones that you made the changes to. If you only have one file, or if you want to commit everything every time, you can do it with a single command. So a little bit farther down, he shows it, but I'll just do some stuff here. So if I did a git commit, I could do -a, which says, don't worry about staging it. I can do a -m. I know I can. And then give it a message. I'll just say second commit. So if I do this command, I don't have to worry about an editor. I don't have to worry about staging it. It just goes ahead and does everything. And again, we get that little, in this case, it's CD12F38. It's actually longer than that. And let's, while we're here, since we've made a couple changes, let's do a git log just to see what that looks like. Yes, it's ugly. But it shows you both our commits, has the author in there and the email address. That's where that is important. And those commit hashes, it shows you the entire thing. It would show all the history, yeah. And as I keep saying, as we go along with these courses, eventually we're going to get to some utilities that'll show this in a much nicer way. We can do it here. Did you have that in here, or are you going to show that yourself? Or I thought I saw it before. Maybe you took it out. Yeah, that's right. It was in a note. Okay, so yeah, you can do a lot of different things with this. You can do some of the utilities show it in a mapped view, so you can see things that are changed and that branched and a bunch of other stuff, which we haven't done branching yet, but hopefully we will. All right, so first, any questions? Yes. Yes, at the moment, the question is about how we're using Git and how it can incorporate into other things, other editors, whatever. Yes. Right now, we're just doing it at the command line. If you can do it at the command line, you know more than 90% of the people who use Git. Okay? Seriously. The command line is the most powerful. It gives you the most options. Most of the other utilities, including things like Visual Studio Code, there's Kraken, there's GitHub Desktop, there's a bunch of other ones. They hide a lot of this stuff that we're doing, and it makes it a little easier. But when you need to do these things, you can't with some of those. But yes, in those situations, what would happen is, if we were using, say, Visual Studio or Visual Studio Code, there's a Git option. There's a Git panel that you can work with, and when you make a change, it says, "Oh, you made a change to this file," and Git knows that the change was made. And you go up there and you put in your commit message and you say commit, and then there's other things you can do to actually publish it out to a server someplace. So all that stuff is integrated with most of the editors that are out there. All right, so we have 2 commits, and you can make as many commits as you want. You can keep going. You can go to town with it. So remember what our file looked like. I have. It does not really get that big. It really keeps it small. It's amazing how small it is and how fast it is. So yes, one more question. Yes. Yeah, the size, yes, correct. If you wanted to try and read it yourself, it would be rather difficult and tedious, but overall, it keeps it fairly small. All right.
Hey, Rob.
Yes.
Refresh your GitHub view.
This one?
The README file, sorry.
I'm sorry. This one.
Yeah. This is the power of Git, by the way. So
okay.
If you go up a little bit, there's that. Oh, it should be here. Add a second commit. Oh, no, it's after add a second commit. Oh, it didn't do it. It should have pushed up. Let me double check on that.
Maybe you didn't push it. Oh, yeah.
Check your log.
So right now, we're just doing things locally. Everything's committed locally and everything else. The big thing that you'll start to realize you forget to do every once in a while is publish or push your code changes. We're not going to do that right now. That's next month's stuff. But before we get to that, I want to do one thing here, and that was I want to do a Git Checkout. Now, before I do a Git checkout, I want to refresh everybody's memory on what this file looks like. So it says here is something different. I'm going to, and I'm going to check out. This is not how you normally do it, but you can. The first one, which is 8FCE67. This is mine. Yours is going to look different. And it gives you a big warning saying, hey, you sure you want to do this? And if you wanted to, we could have created a branch right from that checkout. So we could have branched off that. But I wanted to show, if we check this out, and if I just do a directory here real quick, see how big index is now? And if I open it up, it doesn't have the change I last made, right? That's how fast it goes backwards and forwards. So people who are used to Subversion or something like that, to do what I just did would require 2 different directories.
But where did it put the old one?
The old one's still there.
Where?
It's in that hash. So if we said, okay, fine, we looked at that, we said, yeah, that really was not what I wanted. I really want the master back again. And notice, let me go back up here for a second. See where it says master? That's the name of that branch. That's the default for the branch that you first create. So if I said check out master, it now switches my branch to master. You can see that there. And if I go back, oh, that was good. If I go back and take a look, it's back. So we could have done, if you had put in 5 commits, we could have gone back to the first one just as quickly. And that's why people love this, because it's fast, it doesn't take up a lot of space, and it's easy to work with once you get over the hump of realizing that a lot of this is command line driven. Okay. So,
Question. If, let's say you do a bunch of work, save your file 10 times, you go back the second time you save.
the only thing you're going back to, so the question is, if I make changes without committing, you're saying, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. If I make changes, but I don't commit it, then that is one commit. So you can't go back to the first change you made. You have to commit it. So if you made a change, commit, made a change, commit, made a change, commit, they're all, no, those are all there. You can go back to any one of those. But if you make a whole bunch of changes and commit it once, that's a single unit that you're committing with all the changes in it.
So the idea of looking at a commit is like sticky.
Yes.
So anytime you think you want to be able to go back to the spot, commit.
Yes.
It takes up very little space, so commit a lot.
Yes. Yeah, commits are inexpensive.
Where in older products like Visual Source Save,
Visual Source Save.
it was really
Yes. Visual Source Save, every time you did a commit, it sort of took a copy of everything and stored it.
on some remote server.
Yes. Subversion is more compact than that, but in order to use branching and stuff like that, it's much more tedious than what this is. And just to give you an idea, to think about things down the road, and the reason why a lot of programmers like this is, if I'm using Visual Studio and I do a bunch of stuff and I branch off and I make a bunch of branches, if I want to switch between any of those branches, I never have to leave Visual Studio. I just have to go in. I can if I want to. I can either do it at the command line and keep Visual Studio open, or I can do it all within Visual Studio. But the point is that when I make my changes from different branches, Visual Studio just reloads the file and says, yeah, here we are. Here's the changes. I didn't have to do anything special. It just sees that the file changed under the covers, brings it back in again. You don't have to change directories. You don't have to do a bunch of stuff like that. Yes? No. You can. Does checkout create a new branch? It can. But what you're checking out is a branch. You check out a branch. with every commit, you are creating a spot that you can check out, but that is not a branch. A branch usually has a name. So the only branch we have right now is master. It's the better way to think about it.
When in your course are you going to get to branches?
Yeah, I'm pretty much done. So the only thing is I did get this this Git Log command here, right? That's the one you wanted me to do?
Yeah.
There's
So
only two.
this isn't super helpful now,
Right,
but-
because there's only 2 commits in there.
but later, when we have like several branches going,
Yes.
this really, you know, using all these options here, you can see that the git log command, like many of these commands, they do several things and they're very powerful. And so this particular one will actually, in text format, map the commits as they flow through branches and so on. So it was a little early to introduce it, but I think the gentleman made the point of, you know, git log is throwing out all this information, and it turns out that with git log, there's many different, like you could just say like git log one line, which a lot of people like, because then they don't get a bunch of stuff.
Right.
They also like decorating and color, and people have preferences. Some people even go, now this is a very Unixy thing, but we could do this here in PowerShell too. They'll take their favorite git log command, and in their bash profile, they'll set an alias so that they get their favorite style of git log, like as GL or something. And as a command prompt user, we don't really have that in Windows, but PowerShell does. And we're not really going to demonstrate that tonight, but if people were interested, we could look into adding it to a future lab.
Yep. Yes.
So Chris, does Git actually have an API, or when a product like Visual Studio Code interacts with Git, is it behind the scenes actually using the command line stuff from PowerShell?
That's a good question. So I can't tell you what every product has chosen to do because I just don't know. There is a Git project out there that acts as a API to a Git repository. I haven't actually used it, and I actually don't know if it's still considered super popular. It was almost necessary for a while because until very recently, Git for Windows it was like this 90% Git. So my belief is that a lot of modern Git GUI tools are just shelling out.
Using what
Yeah.
showed.
I think that they're basically just under the covers.
Bring that up,
Right.
Because that's a lot of why we want everybody to see that
Right.
first.
Yeah.
Because that's really the underpinnings of every other thing you do on GitHub.
Yeah. Yeah. So, you know, and it'll be interesting to see how far we get because it's going to portray, you know, like what we do later. But one of the things when you look at tools is I really spent a lot of time looking at them and saying like, okay, this button did 4 things. And was I happy with that? Or do I think this is potentially destructive and you should know that I don't like it?
Yeah, and what he means by that is like, so when I did the command where I said git commit -a-m and gave a message, that was doing more than one thing at once, right? And what some of the tools do is sort of like a macro. And what a lot of the tools do that you get will do things like, which a lot of people don't like when they do a sync, where they'll take the stuff that you've made changes to, and they'll go out and get the stuff from the server, bring it down, take everything you've got and push it back out again. And all those things happening at once sort of blurs what actually is going on and also makes it a little more difficult to undo some of that stuff. It's still, almost everything is undoable that you do with Git, but some things make it more difficult than others. I assume that's what you're talking about, right? Right, Chris?
Yeah, I'm not a fan of sync.
Yeah,
When
I know.
you see sync in a product, especially GitHub Desktop,
Yes.
and also in Visual Studio, it does a git fetch, a git pull, and a git push all in one, which often, many times, especially if you've been doing work and the rest of your team has been doing work, results in a merge commit that the rest of your team will have a heck of a time incorporating.
Yeah.
So it's great for you, but it puts a lot of pressure on the rest of your team. So
And by the way, this is one of those things. When I said if you can do the command line stuff, you know more than 90% of the other people who work with Git. That's a lot of time. I work with people who say, yeah, I just pressed that button there. But what does that do? Well, it goes out and it does a whole bunch of stuff all at once. And as Chris said, it makes it easy for you, but not necessarily easy for your team. So whenever you're ready, Chris. There's also, if you go to the git-scm.com, there's lots of documentation there. You can go out there and read about all this stuff and get into much more detail than what we've done. And I will disconnect. And that's my drink there, and I'll grab that in a second.
So the Git documentation is actually quite good, but when you first look at it, it's confusing. I think after a little bit of this, it won't be. It'll seem like, oh, okay, I kind of get some things going on. So let's see, let me just find the, here we go, HDMI. Let's see what happens here. Okay.
During this brief intermission, any other topics that people are interested in for meetings or for labs over the next 6 months? What's on your mind as a developer? Security of
the world.
Web security. SAML tokens. Okay, single sign-on kind of stuff. Okay, how to make your website impenetrable from Russians, Chinese, and and the guy from the Mr. Robot TV show. He is scary. All right, any other topics people are interested in? Containers. We did containers about a year ago. So you mean Docker? So how to actually take your app and run it in Docker? Okay, that's a good thought. We'll take that. A .NET Core in Docker. You got to note that. Okay, very good. So are you ready, Chris?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so I think so, and everybody can hear me okay? I'm just coming through good, awesome. So we are going to spend time in command line. However, in order to make some of these topics, I think, hit home, I am going to use my favorite Git GUI tool, but just to show you what happens. I'm not going to cheat and use any buttons in there. And then I'm going to tell you that you should either take a look at it or look at the Git history extension in Visual Studio Code, which I also think is very good. So one of the reasons why I do use Visual Studio Code is that way if we have anybody with a Mac or any device, like you can still follow along exactly the same way. And Rob had gone ahead and had you all start out and make some repository, which I believe, let me try and get this back up to the top. And I don't think I'm going to need this whole command prompt to be here. I think we'll be okay. So let's see, Git Status. Okay, so I don't happen to have any commits yet, but everybody here does have at least one commit, right? So let me catch up to you folks. That won't take very long. I'm going to, in Visual Studio Code, I've opened this folder, make an index.html, and then this is, you know, the lab. I want it to be easy to do. So in Visual Studio Code, in the HTML file, they have this shortcut coding thing called Emmet. I don't know that much about Emmet, but what I do know is that if I type an exclamation mark and hit tab, I get this boilerplate, which is really cool. So the only purpose of this is just so I have a file to play with. Okay, so it's okay for you to use your base file. The point of this is not at all to follow along with this exact text. One of the things that's really always very difficult about teaching Git is I find that, you know, I don't want anyone to get focused on contents of files this is about just learning the commands, and so that you can solve the problems that come up at work, right? Like we've all had them, and then you just get frustrated and you delete the repository. So one of the goals of this set of workshops is all of you in here, we come to all these and we're satisfied. You will never delete your Git repo again, I promise you. I've gotten to that point. It's a wonderful place. And then you can, decide whether you like Git or not is still a totally different thing. So there are things that, I freely tell people that it's not simple. And that doesn't make it good or bad. It is. So it's okay. It's okay to acknowledge that it's not simple. So, as Rob had pointed out, once you have a file, then one of the first commands we looked at was Git Status. And Git Status is saying your index HTML is untracked. So I'm just catching up to you folks now, but feel free to catch up if maybe you don't have a commit of a file in place. So all I'm doing is reviewing. With Git Status, I can see I have no commits yet, and I have an untracked file. So I'm going to add that file, and the simplest way to do it is by file name. That's going to get real tedious, and we're all going to hate it, so we're going to talk about ways around that. Then when you do Git Status, it says, yes, now you have, let's look at the difference here. Untracked files are not staged, but it's saying, I will commit, changes to be committed. I'm going to change that file. You've staged it. So there's this hidden area in Git, the staging area. We don't get to view it other than by doing Git Status, or if you want to dive into that .git folder, and I haven't done that. I have dove into the .git folder, and I think it's even useful to look at a few things, but that's a bridge too far. That's too much. Okay, your working area, you'll hear me say working area or working directory a lot. That's just the Git PDN folder. That's all it is. It's where you work. It's where you're going to make changes, and then Git's going to say like, oh, you changed something, and it's going to, in Git Status, it's going to say it's modified, and then you're going to say, okay, let's now move it to the staging area, and then we'll commit. You can say, after you've moved things to staging, you can say, no, I don't want that. And what I kind of like is there's a command here to help you do it, right? Git rm -- cached file, and I can unstage it. Eventually, you're going to use a tool to do all this, but it's okay to understand what's happening. So let me do a git commit, and I did anybody do the add Visual Studio Code as your editor? Did anyone try that? So let me know if you think you're going to change it after I do this. So instead of Vim, I got this, and I get to work in here. I get to work in Visual Studio Code. As it plainly says, all of the lines that start with pound are going to be ignored. You will see as we do these labs, sometimes Git gives you directions in these comments. It's great. I'll tell you, this is half of how I learned it. And then I trucked off to the documentation to go like, okay, what are the gaps that I'm missing here? So the first line of the commit is considered the title of the commit. And let me just start typing, because let's see if I run into it. There it is. Visual Studio Code flips over to red when you have exceeded the standard length of a Git topic. Now, is it bad to do this? No. You can commit this. Nothing's going to happen. Your files are going to be fine. But what you will find is many tools, including GitHub, start truncating at this point. And, I'll admit that I've gotten into the habit of, I just, maybe it's a little bit of like, I like my room to be clean. So at first I didn't used to care, but then I started to care because I hated going to GitHub and seeing truncated topic after truncated topic after truncated topic. And so I go, when I get to that, that's the topic, that's the header for the commit. This is like, okay, now tell more of the story. So let's say here, initial commit. How many times is my first commit like initial commit? So let's say added index.html, and then I can add more lines, and I can say anything I want here. I can say, the website began with a simple boilerplate, and I'll admit, since I use so many tools all the time every day, let me double check and make sure this turns red too. Okay, it doesn't, but generally speaking, don't cross that line. Once again, because different tools, this is going to keep you in sync whether you decide you love SourceTree or Gitkraken or GitHub Desktop, or maybe just viewing on GitHub, or you go use a different tool like Bitbucket or GitLab. Just, you know, they all just sort of, they only have to respect what Git defined as kind of the standard. Some are better, some aren't, so I tend to respect it. Now, when you use an external editor, and Rob showed this, I have to save this file, this temporary file. So I'm going to hit Control S to save it. And let me make sure we can see the command line here. When I close this, then externally, Git recognizes that the process closed, and it says, hey, all right, let's go ahead and do the work. So I think I'm caught up with everybody, right? And I make sure, I always got to make sure that I've got that screen, because that's that screen, and not this screen, which is great for notes, but sometimes I get them mixed up. So yell at me if I'm looking here and saying, don't you all see, don't all you folks see? Then that means I got to get it over. Okay. Yes, we have a question. Right. Okay, so the question was, when I type git commit, I had it set up to open Visual Studio Code. That's correct. So this is your choice, your option, and I want everybody to see, this is something we're trying to do for the hands-on labs. I'm sure you all understand, you know, this is a whole new level of kind of working commitment, but it pays off later, right? We have a GitHub site, philly.net, just github.com, philly.net. And we have a repository called Hands-On Labs. And in Hands-On Labs, these are being separated by year because, hey, we're starting to build these up now. But you don't actually have to go digging through this. I'm trying to keep the front page README ready to go. This is a work in progress. And this is kind of the documentation for the lab. So the idea is you come here, you have a great time. You can come rewatch this on YouTube. It's being recorded right now. And then you even have documentation to come back on. So in this documentation, we did talk about configuring Git for first use. And then remember this mess. Everybody got to see Vim. And then I even offered my condolences if you successfully used Vim. And look, the Linux people, they love to laugh at me for making fun of Vim, but I'm just going to make fun of Vim. So in this case, setting a text editor, this command, if you have Visual Studio Code installed, and when you installed it, it's included in the path on Windows or on Mac and Linux, I think, because I have installed it on Ubuntu Linux and I wasn't asked any questions, it just did it. Once you do that command, Visual Studio Code will pop up when you say git commit and you do nothing else. And it doesn't have to be that editor. I've got some links here for you to check out if you want to set your own text editor. Honestly, the documentation is quite good. Okay. Did everyone add a second commit? Yeah? If you haven't, let's do that. Let's add a second commit. I want to make sure that everyone catches up here, including me. So let me get back to Visual Studio Code. Is it okay for me to, did that answer the question, by the way? Okay. Do you think, like, can you cut and paste from the GitHub documentation? No, it was, well, I feel like it should still work. And let's say, actually, what you want to do, so the question is, the questioner is using a Mac. What you want to do is right there on the GitHub documentation, this link, this goes to Microsoft's documentation, and they do talk about how to do this. They're talking about all three platforms here. So I apologize that I don't have Mac specific instructions, but these docs do. And I'd love for you to try it out. I don't have a Mac, and we're getting more Linux aware here because of .NET Core, no doubt about it. But there's also no question that when I show up here, I figure a lot of you even have Visual Studio. So that's why I even said in the instructions, which I know we didn't talk about, if you've installed Visual Studio 2017, you may already have Git for Windows, and what I can tell you, having experienced this myself, is Visual Studio now manages Git for you. You may not like that. I've just decided to let go and embrace it. Some people don't. Some people don't. Some people have gotten angry because they didn't know. And so then they're like, well, I just updated Git. Why did it roll back? So I'm a hands-off approach. If the machine gets Visual Studio, that's how it gets installed. If the machine does not get Visual Studio, then I do it a different way. So for those of you in this room that are Visual Studio 2017 developers, just let go. In fact, in May, when there was a very important security vulnerability, Microsoft rushed out a Visual Studio release. So you know how we're all getting that yellow flag like every other day now in Visual Studio? They rushed one out, and it was for that purpose. And sure enough, I installed it, and I went and checked the version, and safe and secure. So they even put out a blog post saying, let us do it. And I know, we've all had our run-ins with letting Visual Studio do things, but let's just pretend that was Visual Studio 2010. Like, this is 2017, right? They've got it now, finally. It only took, Visual Studio 97 was my first Visual Studio, so they've got it now. Okay. So what I want to do is I just want to make a file change. So let me come in here, and I think a lot of you have probably already done a second commit. So for me, and if anybody needs me to make any text larger, just let me know. My second commit is just something. Okay, so all I've done is I've changed the file. Now, in Visual Studio Code, I'm not going to stay here. I'm already getting this notification that it's been modified. This is where I'm kind of hinting that eventually we're going to get out of these. We're going to get into tools. But I'm just going to do everything from command line. I've made a modification. I have saved it. I do a Git Status. It tells me I'm on the master branch, and it says, look, you modified index.html. So I'm going to take this opportunity to jump ahead just a little bit and show you another way to add. In the doc, there's a few other things, and I'm going to try to add more to whatever we talk about. I could use wildcards here. So I could say, I'm sorry, I didn't even say the word add. I could say git add.html, and then boom, I'll just get all the HTML files. This is just another way. You'll see more as I do more stuff. So this is me on the road to the second commit. I've made a file change. I've added that change. I've done a Git Status just to see it. And this time we'll do a commit. Did you do a all-in-one? Did you a -m command prompt? Okay. Oh, that AM thing? Yeah, I've never used that. I know about it, but I've never used it. And I think I know about it because I saw your lab a couple years ago.
So, something else.
When you do, okay, so there's a git commit -a-m, and I believe A adds everything in staging, right? All modified and tracked files.
So what A does is it takes everything that's been modified, automatically stages it, and then commits it.
Yeah. Some people like that, and that's okay. Okay, so let me unstage this so we can watch it happen. So if I say git reset, and here's what you're going to hate. These commands have multiple uses. So right now I'm showing you reset used to unstage. I'm hoping that we get to look at reset to roll back commits. Same command, it is frustrating. But eventually what you kind of get in your head is you think of these things as tasks, and you stop worrying about what the command is that runs them. You just remember that, okay, well, this task is git reset. So if I say git reset head index.html, well, all I'm doing here is I'm saying unstage that. And it tells me, okay, well, I unstage index.html just like you said. And if I do a git status now, it says nothing on branch master, no changes added to commit. So just to be a little silly, I'm going to try to commit and watch what Git's going to say. You can't commit. There's nothing to do. You didn't do anything. So your question was, what does git commit -a do? And they even kind of tell you here. You can say git commit -a-m, which means I want you to just add everything for staging, and the -m is I'm going to give you a topic right here. But Git allows you, and this is a very Linuxy thing, Git allows you to combine them. And this is a very Linuxy thing, a Unixy thing, right? This is very, I think a lot of times in Windows we don't get this when we have our command line. Even if you use command line tools, if you're among the brave, it's still like -f, -x, -y. So I could do this now, just to your point, and I could say, okay, changed HTML title. And that added and committed.
Something else that's I like to point out is that we're switching between, Chris is switching between an editor and a command line and a tool here and all this stuff. And everything's being handled. You don't have to restart anything. It all just works together without having to worry about it.
One of the things that's really nice is you'll see that pretty much all the tools that integrate Git support, they play nicely together. Where in previous slides, especially if some of you maybe have some experience with TFS or Subversion integration or Visual Source Safe integration, where you'd go into one tool and all this chaos would break loose when you went back. Like, what are you doing? You're in the middle of something over there, and then bad stuff would happen, and you'd have to go find the guy who you assigned to manage Visual Source Safe, who had the office down in the basement. Because, I mean, who wanted that? That was, oh my goodness. So, why am I showing you this? Because of the pretty graph. That's all. That's all. This is not for any other purpose than to show how commits in Git build off of each other. Every commit, except for the first, has ancestors. This turns out to be extremely important. This is fundamental. So our first commit got a commit hash. Many tools only show you a few digits because Git itself does not demand the whole thing. If you give it enough, it goes, okay, I got it from here. The second commit, the one I just created, it has a parent. That parent should look familiar to you. 08DA59 on my machine. 08DA59. Every commit has one or more parents, always. You can always walk backwards from any commit. So let's look at, Rob showed you Git Log. And that way we can just be all caught up. So your next question might be, okay, those hashes, they look pretty random. Well, it turns out they're not at all. It is a SHA-1 hash of, they're hashes upon hashes. Every file that you store is called a blob, and it is hashed. And that data, that becomes the name of the file in Git's world. It's called a content addressable file system. And then when you create a commit, it takes those blobs, and then it takes the metadata that I've given, my name, my email address, the time, and there's a couple other little pieces that make it absolutely impossible because I've tried this. I've tried really hard to say, like, what if we really coordinate really hard and we both commit at the same time? It just can't do it because there's a couple other pieces of metadata that make them unique, but they are unique forever and ever and ever, and you can always refer to that commit like that. 17E5536E for my current head. So what the heck is that? It's just a pointer to where Git believes I am at in space and time in my working directory. I've told it that I am on the latest code, and then I'm going to go to work on it, right? So it also, by default, you get a master branch, and I'm currently at, the head is pointing to master. So head is a term that many Git folks, like, you just don't worry about it. You just go, whatever, I don't care. But it turns out it's going to actually end up being really important. So I think I'm gonna skip. I'm not going to do some things that are actually really cool. If we decide to do a Git deep dive, you can go explore these hashes. You can do cool little tricks like save the same file twice under two different names, and then go explore the blobs. And what you will eventually find out is it was stored once in Git, because Git says it's the same. I hashed it already. So it's actually stored once in Git. And you can even explore the Git file system and find all of these commit hashes. It's not necessary, but it can be interesting and make you fear the whole process less. So we have 2 commits. I need everybody to add one more, and there's a real purpose for it. So we need another file. There's a couple ways to do this. If you're familiar with CSS, maybe we can make a quick CSS file. If not, it doesn't matter. We really just need another file. So in this case, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to start off like I was making a CSS file. So we're just going to add another file in your folder. I don't care if you use your text editor, use Visual Studio Code. It just doesn't matter. And in this case, I'm going to say, just do something simple, like say, let's make H1s in this website be red. That's all. We're never actually going to look at this website. I don't really care that much about it. But I need another file. The other thing that I want is I want to change index again. So shows you. Well, let's just do this. I'm sure there's somebody here who remembers how to link CSS style sheets. And it's one of those things that I still look up every time. So pretend we linked it. The only reason why is I want to modify the file in place, and I want to add another file, because this is going to let us explore Git Reset and Git Add. Does Visual Studio Code do that, you're saying? Oh, I see. Look at that. Well, see that. Remember, I was talking about Emmet earlier, and I even confessed that I didn't really understand it, other than that I think it's pretty cool. Yeah, it's definitely something to learn, right? Look at that. So there you go. It doesn't. Yeah, no, I don't. It's in the body. It's good enough. We just want files changed. That's all we want. So why do I want that? Because when I look at Git Status, I now have a modified file and an untracked file, okay? So we're going to end up just committing this, and then we're going to play around with reset more than we have been with staging. So let's go ahead and commit, and I'm going to go ahead and keep it simple and just say added CSS file and linked up. Thank you, audience. But I haven't staged it, right? So watch what happens when I hit that. Oh, it says, I'm sorry, you haven't done anything. Now, believe it or not, this happens to me. Happens a lot. So I go, oh, okay, changes, no changes added to commit. All right, good. So let's explore add a different way. This is famous, right? The Git Add dot. Did you show that? Git Add dot? Yeah, so this is like the infamous just do it all. Have you all ever seen Git Add interactive? I'm not sure any of you will like this. I'm not sure any of you will like this. So I may just run through it. So what is Git Add interactive saying? It's saying, well, you've got some unstaged changes on index.html. So what you do, and then you actually have to sit here and figure out how to use this thing. So you go, okay. Well, I guess I want 1, and I guess I want to update it, and then I guess I want to update 1, and now it's telling me when I look at status again, it's saying, okay, well now you've staged those 2 lines. See, the Linux people love this stuff. And then I say add untracked, which is option 4, and I say, yep, I want to add that one untracked, and now everything is staged, and then all I have to do is just hit 7, and I'm out of here, and I go to Git Status. And how many of you think you'll actually use that? How many of you think you'll use it? Anybody? Okay. So I wanted you to know that it's not, this stuff isn't mysterious, right?
Can we remove that from the state?
Okay, so Git Add dot. Let's be honest, that's what most people are going to end up doing. Now, just be advised of what happens. Okay, your modifications are going to get staged. Deletions are going to get staged. and untracked files are going to get staged. That will become more important when we start talking about git ignores, which are really cool files that let you automatically get rid of the files you don't want. Visual Studio developers, we all know about this, right? Yeah, your question. Just git ignore? Yep. 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 Absolutely right. So the comment was, you better know what you're doing with Git Add dot. But look, I'm not going to lie. It gets tedious when you've got like 8 changes and a few of them are HTML and a couple are CSS and a couple are JavaScript and a couple are something else. But you don't want those NPM modules added. So that's where git ignore is going to come in. That's where it's going to come in. You can. Yeah, so the comment was if you could say git add and a directory name and just get that folder. So that's right. So the actual, what's really cool is they give it, you don't have to remember this. Git status, there it is. Git reset head, name of the file. And again, you can use wildcards here too. Eventually, again, this is like sneak preview stuff, right? Eventually, here's what's really gonna happen. You're all just gonna submit and you're gonna say, Chris is right, and you're gonna do this to unstaged files. Look, you're gonna laugh. I sit and use this thing, and then I go out to command line and hit git push. And git fetch and git pull and all that stuff, because there's just like, I want control over this, but you'll discover your own workflow. You really will. And I'm not here to prescribe it for you. Okay. I think we're good for this third commit so we can work with reset. One more question. Yeah, go ahead. Right. Oh, well, yes. 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 The previous commits still exist. And one of the things that is very important is everything in the Git file system is stored as that content addressable format, including that old file, which still has some commit pointing to it. So it still lives. There are ways to remove it that I feel like are probably going to be even beyond the scope of the labs, but I don't know if there's enough. Only because every time I have to do it, I got to go. It's like an hour. Like, oh my gosh, I got to go look up Git filter branch again. You know, but there is. So if you're wondering, hey, legal came along and said that file not only can't be in Git. Okay, your answer is not, okay, well I'm going to just delete it and then commit. It's still in every previous commit. The answer is, let me go look up how to remove a file for all time as if it was never in the repository to begin with, which will rewrite every commit in the repository. Little PSA, just make sure when legal comes up and asks you that you don't just commit over top. Okay.
By the way, the fact that things do, like usernames, passwords, and stuff like that, get committed into GitHub or the other repositories is influenced Microsoft in how they created their special programming secret
management in .NET Core.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
So.
And everybody, yeah. Right. So we got a commercial for Azure Key Vault or many other key vaulting systems where the idea is take it out of your hands, get the key at runtime.
Commercial was brought to you by Microsoft Azure.
But no, absolutely worth it to think about if you have access to things like Key Vault or any vaulting system, because it's just too easy to do, right? So what were we going to do? We were going to commit, and I think just because we want to get moving, let's say I'm just going to call this third commit. And so what did my third commit do? If everybody's got a third commit, then we can play around with reset real quick, and hopefully, well, we'll see. We'll see how far we get. Okay, so why am I showing you this? Because there's a couple things that I'm going to want you to see. First off, this commit, third commit, I am going to, very sneaky, nobody saw me do it. I am going to open up Notepad. Okay, so the tool I'm using is called Git Kraken by Axosoft. It's still my current favorite. I am using a paid version, and the main reason that I chose to pay for it is I felt that as a speaker, I should probably pay for the thing if I'm gonna show people it. It is free for non-commercial use, which means everybody who just wants to learn, go get it. And they'll be happy that I said that, and they don't pay me or anything. And the only thing I've ever done to them is complain about features that I wish it had. But other than that, I think it's great, and they've actually added a lot of suggestions. There's a few things I still wish they would do, but we'll get into that. So what did I do? I snuck away this hash. I'm just hanging on to it. I'm just going to hang on to it because we are going to learn about reset. There's 3 types of reset that have nothing to do with staging, nothing to do with removing files from staging. This is about moving branch pointers backwards. So looking at this graphically, you see how master, the branch that we're on, is pointing to a commit? Get out of your mind the idea that the master branch knows the entire history of the master branch. It doesn't. That the master pointer knows one thing and one thing only. It knows this commit. And we can prove that looking in the Git folder, and we're not going to do that right now. But you could go prove that that is the only thing Git knows. And then what it does is it walks it back because every commit knows its parents. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, this is a common scenario. Visual Studio developers, common scenario. I committed and I forgot to add one CS file. I forgot to track one CS file. So I went and I did Git Add and I committed and it's still untracked. And then somebody else went and grabbed the code and they're like, oh, it blew up, man. Where's the CS file? Where's the new CS file? You added it to the project. Good job. But you didn't track the file. We didn't add it and track it and get it committed. So what do most of us do? We add another commit. Well, I'm here to tell you, you don't have to do that. You no longer need commits locally that say oops. Okay? So, and we're going to talk all about that too. But we've all done it. We've all done it. So, in this case, my oops is, well, actually, let's just reset. Because the first reset is going to be that I just don't like that commit name. And I know there's git commit -- amend, but it's essentially the exact same thing. So I'm going to do git reset -- soft. There's 3 types of resets: soft, mixed, and hard. We're going to do soft. If I say this funny notation, head ~1, means you can actually do whatever you want here. You could put in a commit, you could put in a branch name, but what you're saying is start at head, go back 1. If I said head ~2, then I would be resetting master all the way back here. And what everyone in this room is thinking is throwing these commits away, destroying them. But I'm going to prove to you that's not true. So this is about not being afraid ever again. That's what this is about. I want you to come out of all these labs with no fear. So what is a soft reset? Well, Git Kraken, which this disappoints me, and I've written about this. Git Kraken made it look like it went away. Okay, we'll come back to that. But a soft reset, moves the branch pointer and it moves head. So that what Git now, by moving head, Git says, okay, your working copy is pointing to the files at this state, at this time. I'm also going to move the master pointer back 1. So these branch pointers, I call them sticky notes because you just pick them up off the board and you move them. That's all you do. But it leaves the working area intact, and it also leaves the staging area intact. And you can see it right here in Git Kraken. The files are still staged. And if I come here, we can still see, and I'm doing this just that way I don't have to, this is real quick, right? I'm showing you that all my changes are still here. Okay, so what's the value of this? I could add another file. I could change the commit message. Okay, let's go take a look at what it looks like in Git Status, which after all of you typed Git Reset and went back one, you're saying, oh, everything's still staged, and they're actually in the status that I left them. So in this particular case, all I'm going to do is I'm just going to say, what did I really do in this one? This was the new file. So added CSS and linked. All right, so a better commit message, right? Better commit message. Was everyone able to do that? Is that pretty straightforward? Git reset soft. Head, and you can go back more than one. Going back more than one, though, has implications, right? Because you're hopping over some changes. But you are leaving your working area intact, and you're leaving what you staged intact. That one is pretty useful. I will be honest with you, I don't use mixed very often, but for completeness, you should know what it does. So what is a mixed reset? A mixed reset moves the branch pointer, unstages everything, but leaves your working area intact. So the difference is your files don't change, everything got unstaged, which you could have done anyway. You could have done a soft reset and then unstaged. But let's go take a look at what happens when I get status now. Nothing staged. Nothing staged. Is this useful? Maybe. Is it more useful than soft? I don't know. Is it that different? Maybe not, because you could just stage everything again. Or, oh yeah, so up here, it looks like, and I didn't save that commit message that time, but never fear. I didn't save that commit hash, but that's okay. That's okay. So what I've got is unstaged files, but let's take a quick peek at them. Still have my changes. I still have my changes. So that's mixed. Why do I like Git Kraken? Because I can click on any of these and I can say it's a one-to-one with what Git's really doing. In other tools, they pick for you, and then you got to find out what it's doing. So I'm showing you why I like this tool, even though we are command line tonight. All right. Yep. So what could I do now? Well, for one thing, I could say, you know what? I had forgotten to add that second page in, so let me do that. Let me make sure I get that second web page in, because the boss Lundberg is around the corner and he is not going to be happy. I'm going to have to work all weekend. So here we go. So I'm basically just changing what I wanted to do, and then I'll do the infamous Git Add dot. Now I don't care if anyone here added a second page, but you should have been able to do a Git Reset mixed, and really no ill effects here, right? Just Git Add dot and then another commit. So I think everyone, this one I'm going to name kind of odd, because that'll help me find it later. So git commit -m. And that's just because I want to do it quickly. So was everybody able to do a mixed reset? Both of these are pretty painless because they didn't change anything, right? You can just stage again. They're helpful though, they're helpful. Notice that the commit is different. It has to be for a variety of reasons. The time changed for one thing, and also in this particular case, I added another blob. Okay, this next one is the one that scares everybody because it seems destructive. So Git Reset hard. If I've already told you that Git Reset soft preserves the working area and preserves staging, and Git mixed eliminates staging but preserves the working area, any guesses on what Git Reset hard is going to do? Yes, so overwriting those files. That's exactly it. Git Reset hard is go back in time. Unstage, go back in time. So let's see, what does it mean to go back in time? It means second.html is going to disappear. My little text here that I linked is going to go away, and so will my new site.css. That's all going to happen if I say git reset hard head and go back 1. That's how I remember that. Head -1, even though it's a tilde if you can't see it. Now, what's interesting is you get a slightly different message here. Git tells you I just moved head. I picked up that sticky note and moved it back one. I moved it to 170.5536. And sure enough, 170.553. Sure enough, just moved it. It also moves the current branch that you're on, master, moves it back, just picks that node up, moves it too. That's all it does. This feels destructive, right? And for all 99% of purposes, it kind of is. So we're going to talk about techniques. We might have to start off the next one with them, and maybe we'll get to them right now. Techniques to make this easier when you want to play, but you're afraid. I don't want you to be afraid. So let's do the first thing right now that keeps you from being afraid. Remember this commit that I saved? Remember what Rob showed you about how you can check out at any hash? What I don't like, I wish there was a way that I could click a button that says show me hidden commits, which is a term that I just made up right now. It is not what Git calls them. And I want to tell you what Git calls them. Git calls them unreferenced commits. If you're familiar with .NET garbage collection, this concept's going to be simple for you. Any commit that cannot be pointed to by walking back from all of the branches and all of the tags in a repository is considered unreferenced. Exactly. It's an unrooted concept, right? It's unreferenced. It's ready to be garbage collected. And sure enough, Git has garbage collection, and you don't have to worry about it. But it's still there. It's still there right now. So let's go Git Checkout. And if you didn't save this hash, that's okay. That's all right, because we're going to rescue it anyway. And I don't need the whole hash. Let's back off a little bit. That seems good. Okay, now Git scares you when you do this. You are in detached head state. We have gone right into The Walking Dead on AMC. Like, what is it? This is the point where you delete your repo, right? Everybody? You just throw it away. This is broken. I mean, forget it. Broken. No way. Oh my goodness. That's it. That's all that's happened. But oh, look which commit came back. Remember this commit? Remember this one? It's not gone. Now, how is this new to anyone? And is this going to make you fear Git a little bit less? Okay, so now you might be saying, well, great. How do I get it back on master? Right? Well, so there's a couple ways you could do it. I'm going to try Git push master and see what happens. No, actually, not Git push master. Git merge. I'd want to go, let me think. Actually, I could probably just reset. No, because I'd have to be on master. Think about this. What if that's a good point. If I check out master, so why do I have to do this? Because I currently have head checked out. I'm not on any branch. That's what I'm trying. That's what I'm going to do. I want it. Well, I know the commit though. I know the commit. So if I say Git Checkout master, and this is what it looks like. Oh my gosh, it's gone again. I'm so scared I'm going to delete the repo. So I should be able to say Git. I don't think I need to do status. I think I can say Git Reset. You can see that. You can see I rehearsed this part. This seems reasonable. Yeah, there you go. So what was it? What was that? I had to prove it to myself. So we learned what Git Reset hard does, right? Git Reset hard blows away the staging area and moves your working files to that point in time. But instead of going back in time, I went forward in time, up an ancestor, and I said, can you just pick up that sticky note? Just pick it up, put it here instead, and I've even got the signpost for you, 607 BD8. No, Mixersoft will move the pointer, but see, it won't necessarily reset the files, which I'm going to guess is what you probably wanted when this happened to you. Most of the time, that's what you wanted. So this should give us some time to make our first branch. Go ahead. Oh, okay. You know what? Let's stop and do that. I feel like I'm getting advanced, but I know that's the next logical question. So, how many people are familiar with the SQL transaction log or any database's transaction log? Turns out everything you do in the database, right, even though to us we said insert and some magic happened, it gets saved in a log. Git has the transaction log. It's called Git Ref log. I'm not going to go into detail, but we're going to be, and I'll be honest with you, I'm not an expert at this log, but I think we'll figure it out. Just by looking at it, I can say like, okay, well, this one right here where I added the CSS and linked, this is the one I really want. That's the commit I really want, and there's the commit hash. So is that true? Is that the one I really want? Yeah, I think it is. I think it is. So why don't I do that again? Let me save that, which you can do now. I can cut and paste right inside. Let's do a Git Reset hard of that, which you should be able to do as well. And let's take a look at what happened. Well, throw it away, or it's just not pointed to, it's not referenced. This is probably not the way you really want to work from day to day, so that's why I want to go into branches. Well, we got 14 minutes left. We should be able to do this. Yeah, 13. So, no, go ahead, Rob. Say that again, I'm sorry. No, I just basically said, oh, you're talking about this syntax, which I'm going to flat out tell you I don't understand. So there's a syntax here. It's in the Git documentation. It goes head, caret, and then you put a hash here? Or do you put a number? So I apologize, I don't know this syntax. And part of it is because I've made do without it, right? With the other tricks that I've kind of done that you hopefully were able to follow along, I don't need any other syntax, right? So I think what we want to do is explore what happens when you type git branch. If you do nothing else, you just get a list of your branches. That becomes more useful later. If you say git branch and you type any old word, what really happens, this is what really happens, is Git goes and grabs another post-it off of the pad, writes the name of the branch on it, and points it at the same exact commit. Get out of your mind that a separate history is created. That's going to be illustrated really well here. So git branch feature. There didn't used to be a branch command, at least I'm pretty sure. So a lot of you may be used to the syntax of git checkout -b and then the name of the branch. Identical things. You're okay to do that. In fact, that's still what's kind of logged in here. But the fact is that this is the syntax now. You can say branch and you just get a branch. So it's a different syntax, which I can actually do right now. But let me go ahead and finish explaining what happened. If you said git branch feature, you are now getting the status of you're working on a new branch, right? So you feel like you're working on a new place, a place where you can diverge your code. But we haven't done anything yet. So what Git's really done is it said, okay, I also know that feature points here. It points to F1378, and so does master. To your point, though, notice that one thing that Git branch did not do, that Git Checkout -b does. Git branch didn't check out the branch. We'll check on status, and we'll prove that. On branch master. Why is that important? Because when you commit, here is what Git does. It says, what branch are you on? Which is like this metaphysical thing. What are you on? It says, let me take a commit that points back to your current spot, and then I'm going to pick up the sticky note for your branch and your branch alone and move it up one. Oh, and then I'll move head up too. But all the other sticky notes stay in place, and we're going to get to see that. We're going to see that. But you wanted to see, if you want to see Git Checkout -b, let's do that. Git Checkout -b, well, I'll just call it, I think I called the other one. the other one. So what is this going to do? This is just like branch, except it also checks out. And I will tell you, this is the one that my brain tends to go to. You got to decide what you like. It doesn't bother me. But look at how Git Kraken, this Git Kraken, by the way, is representing this the best of all the Git tools that I've examined in a while. I like how this is the real deal. They're all pointing to the same place. So what does that mean? It means we can, now that we've got 3 branches here, go ahead and make branches. I don't care which one you work on. Make a change to a file now and commit it. Any change on any branch. In my case, I'm going to go ahead and stick on thirds here. I'm going to stay here. So again, I tend to come in here just because I can do this really quickly. Just make some new file. And all I did, I just made a file. So everybody just make a file on your new branch. And if I do a Git Status, it's ready to go, right? No, this tool knows it. It knows I've got an untracked file. Work in progress, it's ready. But we'll do it the right way. Hey, we've gotten some hosts tonight from folks on Mixer. There's 12 on right now. Earlier was 18. So I want to thank everybody who joined us on Mixer and YouTube. I don't have the YouTube stats in front of me right now. Make sure you follow us though, so that we know to keep providing content like this. Let us know what you like, and don't forget the replay of this is on the YouTube channel for everybody here. And liking and commenting on that helps us. We want to know what you folks like. Okay, so let me go ahead and continue. If you've added a file, I didn't actually stage it. See, I do that all the time. So no, let's do AM. You're gonna get me hooked on this. You are. You're gonna get me hooked on AM. Added nonsense file. Wait, what? Nothing. Oh, it doesn't add untracked files? Is that a thing? No. Should it? Okay, I gotcha. Now, I'll mea culpa this a little bit. How many of you think that I use Git Add anymore? Because I've got this beautiful clicky. Oh yeah, stage, unstage, unstage. But I still know what it does, and that's what's most important. Just know what it does. So, what have I done? Is everybody able to add your new commit? And I want to show you this graphically. This isn't some separate history. It's still the same linear history. Now, when do things diverge? If I go back to another branch and make a new commit, that's when the wishbone starts, right? But right now, everything's fine. So I think I'm going to get to show you 2 cool things here. So one of them is that what did Git do? It created a commit, it pointed it back to a parent, and it moved the sticky note up 1. And then it also moves head. So if I was really, really, really going to try a Git reset, how do you think I go about it? Let me show you how I go about it. And then everybody, you can try it too. So if you're on this latest commit, I'm going to say git branch. Just make a branch real quick. So I make this quick branch keeper. Because I don't know, after this reset, I may regret it. I could do all the fancy jazz I showed you earlier, but after you've made that branch, you don't switch to it. You could switch to it, it doesn't really matter. And you could say git, whichever one's not your throwaway, git reset. All right. And so I've moved thirds back one, but if I decide I don't like it, I've still got that other branch. Okay. So this leads me to fast forwarding. This is our first foray into merging. And we're going to just have a few minutes to do it. This isn't going to get, we're not going to get to explore merge conflicts for that. I've been thinking we're probably going to have to start with a repo that's already converted, because we're not going to sit here and make a bunch of commits. So that'll be where we clone, so that'll start that, but we're still going to work locally after we clone. We're going to have a bunch of branches, and there's going to be a total mess. It's going to be just like work. And we'll say, okay, when this branch merges into this one, it's going to be a mess. But we're going to have to clean it up using commands. So when you merge, what you're really saying is, so I'm on the thirds branch, and if I were to say git merge keeper, what I am telling Git is, I want you to merge the commits from keeper onto thirds. Well, Git is going to look at this graph and say, boy, that is easy. Because all I got to do, you're already pointing in the same direction. It's the same linear line of commits. When this happens, Git will do what is called a fast forward merge, and it will tell you that. So first I've got to switch. I'm on thirds, but I want to merge keeper, right? Does that make sense? You merge away from you. You're bringing the branch to you. So if I do a git status, or if any of you do a git status, you're going to see on branch thirds, and then you say git merge keeper, and let's see what Git does. Git says on that line right there, it says I fast forwarded. That's just a fancy term for it saying I didn't have to do anything other than pick up the sticky note and move it up one. This is different from when you do a merge and it creates a merge commit. That's the other type of merge. There's fast forwarding and merge commits. When a merge commit is in place, that's what causes all the headaches, all the problems.